In 1992, a film arrived in American theaters that critics couldn't quite agree on how to categorize. It wasn't simply an erotic thriller. It wasn't simply a Hollywood scandal. And it wasn't simply a star vehicle, because when filming began, its star wasn't a star at all. Written by the highest-paid screenwriter in the industry, directed by a filmmaker who refused to compromise, and protested by activists before a single scene had been shown to the public, Basic Instinct became one of the most talked-about films of the decade. But how did a $3 million script turn into a movie that riot police had to guard? And why, more than 30 years later, do its own director and star still disagree about what happened on set? Let's uncover the story behind Basic Instinct. To understand this film, we need to go back to 1990. Hollywood was entering an era of high concept, high-risk erotic thrillers, and studios were willing to spend enormous sums chasing the next one. Into this environment stepped Joe Eszterhas, a screenwriter already known for Flashdance and Jagged Edge. He wrote a new script in roughly 2 weeks. He called it Love Hurts. Carolco Pictures paid $3 million for it, a record for a spec screenplay and proof that a studio believed this story could become something enormous. Eszterhas drew from his own life. Catherine Tramell, the novelist at the center of the story, was reportedly inspired by a go-go dancer who once pulled a gun on him. Nick Curran, the detective who falls for her, was said to be based on a real thrill-seeking cop he once knew. Paul Verhoeven signed on to direct, and almost immediately, the production began to fracture. Verhoeven wanted the film pushed further than Eszterhas was comfortable with. Eszterhas walked away entirely. Rewrites followed, then failed. Then the production quietly returned to the original script. It was, from the very beginning, a film built on conflict. Then came the search for its lead. Nearly every major actress in Hollywood was considered for the role of Catherine Tramell. Michelle Pfeiffer, Julia Roberts, Melanie Griffith, Geena Davis, Kim Basinger, Kelly Lynch. One by one, they turned it down. Some found the material too explicit. Some found it too dark. By most accounts, 13 women said no before the role reached an actress named Sharon Stone, someone Verhoeven had directed once before, and someone almost nobody else in the room wanted to cast. She got the part anyway. And according to Stone, she never stopped hearing about how far down the list she had been. At the center of Basic Instinct is a story that resists easy answers. A detective is drawn into the orbit of a woman who may or may not be a killer, and the film never lets its audience feel entirely certain either way. Desire and suspicion blur together. The line between attraction and danger keeps moving. By the time the credits roll, viewers are left holding more questions than resolutions, a choice that divided critics then and still divides them now. But long before critics saw a single frame, another story was already unfolding. In early 1991, the script leaked to gay and lesbian community leaders in San Francisco, the very city where filming was about to begin. What they read alarmed them. A bisexual killer, a queer love interest, a genre that seemed to reach for those characters only as villains. Activist groups mobilized. Filming locations were guarded by a restraining order and riot police. Some demonstrators were arrested. When the film finally opened, protesters stood outside theaters, handing out flyers that revealed the ending, hoping to talk audiences out of buying a ticket. It didn't work. Basic Instinct opened at #1 anyway. And then there was the scene. The one that, more than any plot point, is the reason this film is still discussed today. A brief, unscripted-feeling moment in a police interrogation room built around a single gesture. Paul Verhoeven has told the same story about its origin for decades. That the idea came from a woman he once knew who understood and enjoyed the effect she had on a room. Sharon Stone tells a different story. In her own memoir, she has said she was never told the shot would be so explicit, that she was upset enough afterward to speak with a lawyer, and that she first saw the finished footage in a room full of strangers who hadn't earned the right to see it. Verhoeven has rejected her account outright. Stone has never withdrawn hers. Before we go further, consider this question. When a single scene defines a film's legacy more than its plot does, whose version of events should history believe? The director's, or the performer whose body is actually on screen? It's a question that still surrounds Basic Instinct more than 3 decades later. The film went on to earn $352 million worldwide, 2 Oscar nominations, and a Golden Globe nomination for Stone. It also went on to earn something else. A reputation as one of the films most responsible for shaping and complicating how Hollywood handled sex, power, and consent on set. A sequel arrived in 2006, made without Verhoeven, without Eszterhas, and without much of what had made the original work. It closed in theaters within 17 days. For some viewers, Basic Instinct remains a masterclass in tension. A film that understood exactly how to keep an audience off balance for 2 hours. For others, it's remembered less for what's on screen than for everything that happened around it. The protests, the lawsuits, the decades-long disagreement between the two people who were there. Perhaps the reason Basic Instinct endures is because it refuses to separate the two. The film and its controversy were never really different stories. They were the same story, told from opposite sides of the camera. Basic Instinct is more than a film. It's a case study in what happens when ambition, image, and consent collide in front of a rolling camera, and in how differently two people can remember standing in the exact same room. If you enjoyed this deep dive into film history, subscribe for more untold stories behind the films, performances, and controversies that shape the movies we still talk about today. And tell us below, when you watch that scene now, does it change how you see the film?